In 1901, off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers stumbled upon a shipwreck. Among the amphorae, they recovered a shapeless lump of green bronze. For nearly a century, it was dismissed as a mere piece of metal. It wasn't until the early 21st century that X-ray tomography revealed the impossible. Hidden inside was a mechanism of more than 30 bronze gears. The teeth of some, just a millimeter in size, were cut with astonishing precision. This was an analog computer, created 1,500 years before the first complex astronomical clocks appeared in Europe. Official history paints a picture of ancient Greece with its columns and simple levers. This artifact demonstrates another level of sophistication. It didn't just track the sun and moon, it modeled the subtle variations of the lunar orbit using epicyclic and differential gears. These are highly complex engineering concepts, thought to have been rediscovered only during the Renaissance. The Antikythera mechanism is not an anomaly. It is a piece of evidence that calls into question our entire timeline of technological progress. And this piece of evidence is not unique. It is part of a pattern of proof that doesn't fit into standard textbooks. Here is the first puzzle. How did the Turkish Admiral Piri Reis map the ice-free coastline of Antarctica in 1513? The continent was not officially discovered until 1820, by which time it was already covered by an ice sheet. We will find the answer to this question in the fifth section. Here is the second. Why do archaeologists find clay jars with copper cylinders and iron rods in the ruins of Mesopotamia? These Baghdad batteries could function as galvanic cells, yet the civilizations of that time left no texts about electricity. We will solve this mystery in the fourth section. Such objects are called out-of-place artifacts, or OO parts. For mainstream science, they are an inconvenient problem. They break the smooth line of progress, forcing us to acknowledge technological peaks and valleys we know nothing about. These are systemic glitches in our historical matrix that demand investigation. Therefore, we invite you to change your role, from a passive listener to an investigator. The traditional school approach to history involves memorizing dates and names in a strict sequence. It paints a convenient, linear picture of progress from the stone axe to the smartphone. A forensic approach, however, involves searching for anomalies, analyzing evidence, and testing theories. It allows for the possibility that the official version is incomplete. We will be using the latter. Our toolkit includes modern scientific methods, the decoding of ancient technologies, and comparative map analysis. Our investigation relies on facts, not speculation. Schoolbook history is like looking at a river from a bridge. We only see its current flow. A forensic approach is like the work of a geologist who studies old riverbeds and layers of silt to understand how the river has changed its course. We will show you the cracks in the frozen picture of the past. That is where the real story is hidden. Here is the roadmap for our investigation, so you know what evidence we will examine and when. In 6 minutes, we will open the bronze case of the Antikythera mechanism. You will see gears in action that should not have existed in ancient Greece, a work of engineering genius, frozen in time. 11 minutes from now, you will see Antarctica with your own eyes on a map created 300 years before its official discovery. We will analyze every detail of this map and consider the hypotheses about its origin. And in 19 minutes, we will stage an intellectual duel. We will pit the skeptics, who believe OO parts are fakes, against the enthusiasts, who see them as the legacy of forgotten civilizations. You will decide for yourself whose arguments are more convincing. 3 timestamps, 3 key pieces of evidence. In 6 minutes, you will see technology that should not have existed. Let's begin our dive. The Antikythera mechanism is not a mistake. It is the most famous exhibit in a museum of impossible things. Imagine finding a modern-looking iron hammer inside a rock formation that is 100 million years old. What is out of place? The tool or the date? This is an out-of-place artifact, or OO part. For science, it's a convenient label to shelve a mystery. But the shelf is already collapsing under the weight of evidence. All over the world, grooved metal spheres have been found in Precambrian layers, stones with engravings of dinosaurs, and an iron screw in a coal seam. Dozens of finds on 5 continents. This isn't a glitch, it's a pattern. The main question for any OO part is not, what is it, but when was it made? That's why the primary tool in these cases isn't an archaeologist's shovel, but the clock of history. But how does this clock work? How do scientists determine that an artifact is out of place? The simplest method is stratigraphy. It works like studying layers of paint on a wall. The deeper the layer, the older it is. It seems simple. But geological shifts, erosion, and even ancient wells can shuffle these layers like a deck of cards. This is the main argument of the skeptics. Your hammer just fell into a crack. Because of this vulnerability, the forensics of the past use a combination of methods. Only a convergence of results from radiocarbon, geological, and other analyses provides a reliable verdict. But sometimes, the most accurate instrument is the eyes of the person who first saw what should not have been there. In the spring of 1901, at a depth of 45 meters, sponge diver Elias Stadiatis saw a scatter of bronze and marble corpses. Among them was the formless lump that was almost thrown back into the sea. For decades, it lay in the Athens Museum, considered part of a broken astrolabe. But one day, after drying out, the artifact cracked open. This accidental fracture changed everything. Instead of a simple instrument, archaeologists saw a highly complex system of dozens of gears. Archaeologist Derek de Solla Price said that finding such a thing from that era was like finding a jet plane in the tomb of Tutankhamun. To read the code hidden in this bronze time machine, scientists had to invent a new way of looking into the past. What if we could see every detail inside this lump without destroying it? This was the challenge solved in the early 2000s using X-ray tomography. The first blurry images from the 20th century only hinted at its complexity. But modern 3D models transformed the chaos of corrosion into a precise digital copy. 37 gears, dials, and 3,500 text characters hidden within layers of rust emerged on the screen. Now we have a complete model of this ancient computer. We can not only look at it, but also disassemble it piece by piece and run it. In the next section, we will turn on this 2,000-year-old machine and decipher its code. Prepare to be amazed. To understand that we are looking at a computer, one detail is enough. The mechanism modeled the elliptical orbit of the moon, which causes its apparent speed in the sky to change. This anomaly would not be mathematically described by Johannes Kepler for another 1,500 years. At first glance, it appears to be a highly sophisticated calendar predicting eclipses and the dates of the Olympic Games. But the details turn it into a computer. Inside a case the size of a shoebox are 37 bronze gears. They use a differential gear, rediscovered in the 16th century. The height of the teeth on some gears is just 1.4 millimeters. This level of precision was not surpassed until the 18th century. The genius of the engineers is obvious, but where did they get such accurate data? The answer requires centuries of observation. The simplest theory is that the Greeks themselves, geniuses like Archimedes, did it. But the inscriptions on the mechanism point to another source. To predict eclipses, it uses Babylonian astronomical cycles, such as the Saros cycle. This is direct proof. Greek engineers relied on a database compiled over centuries by another civilization. The history of the mechanism is older than the device itself. And it was not unique. The Roman orator Cicero, in his work On the Republic, personally described the sphere of Archimedes, which modeled the movements of the planets. This was not an anomaly, but part of a lost technological tradition. But any tradition leaves traces, machines, tools, blueprints. Where are they? The main challenge in creating such a device is not the astronomy, but the manufacturing. It requires three things. First, advanced metallurgy for a pure bronze alloy. Second, precision tools to cut hundreds of microscopic teeth. Third, a system for standardizing parts. The complete absence of these supporting technologies is the central paradox. We have the final product, but no trace of the production chain. It's like finding a perfectly grown oak tree in the desert, but not a single acorn around it. This technological void compels us to look for other impossible technologies in the wrong category. Here are two candidates. The Baghdad Battery, a clay jar with a copper cylinder and an iron rod. The Nimrud Lens, a polished piece of rock crystal. For science, these are a scroll container and a decorative furniture inlay. Safe explanations. But experiments with replicas debunk them. A copy of the battery, filled with grape juice, produces an electrical voltage. A copy of the lens can start a fire. This proves they could have worked as technologies. Have you ever taken apart an old device, not understanding how it works, but seeing that it was made with genius? How exactly did this clay pot work? Its design is too deliberate to be accidental. A terracotta vessel, a copper cylinder inside it, and an iron rod within the cylinder. Everything is insulated from each other with bitumen. To create a galvanic cell, you only need three things: two different metals and an acid. Copper, iron, and grape juice were abundant in ancient Mesopotamia. But this is no mere coincidence. Exact replicas of the battery, filled with juice, generate a stable voltage of up to 2 volts. This is enough for the finest gold plating. The question changes from, could this have worked, to what was it for? They had energy. But what did they spend it on? A voltage of a few volts is useless without electrical appliances. But there are 3 hypotheses. The first and most likely, electroplating. A weak current allows for coating cheap metals with a very thin layer of gold, creating artifacts that are difficult to explain by mechanical means. The second, medicine. The current could have been used for pain relief or primitive electropuncture. The third, religion. Priests could have embedded batteries in statues so that touching an idol would cause a divine thrill. We have no instructions, but we have proven capability. The ancients knew how to not only generate energy, but also control light. Let's move from a spark of electricity to a beam of light. Before you is the Nimrud Lens, an oval piece of rock crystal 3,000 years old. Mainstream science considers it a decorative inlay for furniture. Its optical properties are considered a coincidence, but experiments shatter this version. The lens provides 3-fold magnification and has a focal length of 11 centimeters. It can focus sunlight and start a fire. Moreover, there are Assyrian cuneiform tablets with text so small that it is almost impossible to read without a magnifying glass. Even if it was just glasses for a scribe, this pushes back the invention of optics by hundreds of years. We have seen how they could see the micro-world. Now let's see how they saw the macro-world. What did the world look like in the minds of people before Columbus? Medieval maps are diagrams with Jerusalem at the center, mythical monsters, and vast blank spots. The transition from these to the Piri Reis map of 1513 is like going from the vision of a newborn to the clear sight of an adult. Its accuracy in depicting Africa and South America is shocking. It looks as if it were compiled from high-altitude photographs, but the most impossible detail is in the south. This map shows a land that humanity would not officially discover for another 300 years. This is Antarctica. In the next chapter, we will explore the map that should not exist and try to find traces of a civilization erased from all other maps of the world. The map's creator was the Turkish Admiral Piri Reis. In 1513, he presented it to the Sultan. In his notes, he admitted it was a compilation of 20 sources, including maps by Columbus and ancient maps from the time of Alexander the Great. He simply copied. But here is what he copied. On the southern edge, there is a coastline resembling the coast of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. It was officially discovered by the Bellingshausen and Lazarev expedition only in 1820. The map was 307 years ahead of them. Charles Hapgood believed the coast was shown free of ice, pushing the date of the source map back by thousands of years. But can something be depicted with mathematical precision by chance? Any ancient map is distorted. Transferring a sphere onto a flat surface without errors is impossible. But studies by the U.S. Air Force and Hapgood showed that the Piri Reis map uses a complex azimuthal projection, with its center possibly in ancient Egypt. This required knowledge of spherical trigonometry, which was unavailable in the 16th century. If you overlay a modern map on it, correcting for this projection, the coastlines of South America and Africa match up. The error in longitude for South America is less than 1 degree. The accuracy is not accidental. But how can we explain the obvious errors on it? Is this a sign of forgery or a key to the puzzle? Skeptics point to the errors. The Caribbean islands are incorrect, and the Amazon River is duplicated. For them, this proves the map is a fantasy, and the coincidences are random. But there is another hypothesis. Piri Reis did not create but compiled the map from dozens of fragments, which were themselves copies of ancient copies. Errors accumulated with each redrawing. His work is like trying to sew a quilt from scraps of fabric from an ancient tapestry. Some pieces retained their perfect pattern, while others faded. The complete cloth will never be perfect. We have examined 3 stories. But what if one of them is a clever hoax? The main barrier is doubt about authenticity. What if the mechanism is a forgery and the map is a joke? This is where our next tool comes in: scientific verification methods. Radiocarbon dating, stratigraphy, and radiography are the lie detector for a historian. They separate anomalies from hoaxes. This filter works. The Piltdown man's skull was considered genuine for decades until science exposed it. Now, we will run all our artifacts through this rigorous check. Until now, we have been enthusiasts. In the next chapter, we will become skeptics and try to debunk them ourselves. Every living being has an internal atomic clock that starts at the moment of death. While an organism is alive, it constantly exchanges carbon with the atmosphere, maintaining a stable proportion of the radioactive isotope carbon-14. After death, this exchange stops, and the isotope begins to decay at a known rate. The less of it that remains, the older the sample. This is radiocarbon dating. But this method is fragile. First, it only works on organic material and is useless for metal or stone. Second, its accuracy decreases after 50,000 years. Third, it is vulnerable. Contamination with just 1% of modern carbon can make a 12,000-year-old sample appear almost 1,000 years younger. That is why this analysis is never used alone. Dating stone requires a completely different approach. How did a modern-looking iron hammer end up inside a 100-million-year-old rock? This is the London hammer. Geological layers are like the pages of a book. The deeper, the older. The rock around the hammer was dated using this principle. The conclusion seemed obvious. Humanity is older than the dinosaurs. But science seeks the simplest explanation. The hammer did not grow into the ancient rock. The rock formed around it. It fell into a mineral-rich spring in the 19th century, and over decades, a hard shell grew around it, mimicking ancient stone. This process is like making a candy apple. The liquid syrup coats the apple and hardens. The age of the hammer is a few hundred years. The age of the minerals is millions, but the moment they combined is recent. This method proved powerless against the Antikythera mechanism, whose context was destroyed by the sea. How do you prove the age of a metal artifact from the bottom of the sea? Radiocarbon dating and stratigraphy don't work here. But the mechanism was not found in a vacuum. In 1900, sponge diver Elias Stadiatis surfaced from the depths, muttering about a heap of dead naked people. These were bronze statues, among which the mechanism lay. Coins and amphorae from this ship are clearly dated to the 1st century BC. A skeptic might argue, what if it was planted there later? That's when linguistics comes into play. Inscriptions have been preserved on the mechanism itself. The form and style of Greek letters changed over time, and paleographers confidently date them to the same 1st century BC. 3 independent lines of evidence: numismatics, archaeology, and language. The case for Antikythera is ironclad. But if the evidence is so compelling, it raises a major conflict. Why isn't the scientific community rushing to rewrite history textbooks? Imagine 2 chairs before you. On one sits a bronze computer from the 1st century BC, a piece of material evidence. On the other is an official history textbook, where there is no place for it. Which one would you choose? This choice is the basis of the conflict between skeptics and enthusiasts. It is not a battle of ignorance versus knowledge, but a clash of 2 scientific philosophies. The motto of academics is, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. They are the guardians of the method, mindful of fakes like the London hammer. The creed of enthusiasts is, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. They are the explorers, willing to take risks for the truth. In the next chapter, we will stage a confrontation between these 2 forces, and you will decide whose arguments are stronger. The skeptic's attack begins with one killer question: if the Greeks had a computer, where is everything else? This is not just a question, it's a challenge. One complex mechanism requires an entire ecosystem: precision machines for cutting gears, theoretical works on mechanics, engineering schools. Archaeology is silent. There are no blueprints, no factories, no other similar devices. For them, Antikythera is the work of a lone genius, not a sign of systemic knowledge. Their confidence is fueled by experience. History is full of fakes like the London hammer, and this has bred a presumption of guilt towards any anomaly in science. This is not dogma, it is a defense mechanism. Their conclusion is logical. It is easier to believe that one artifact is a miraculous exception than to admit that our entire timeline of progress is wrong. But the enthusiasts have an answer that strikes at the weakest point of this logic. To the question, where is everything else? Enthusiasts respond with disarming simplicity: it did not survive. Less than 1% of ancient literature has come down to us. Bronze and iron were strategic resources, almost always melted down for weapons. We see only crumbs. This is the technological iceberg hypothesis. The Antikythera mechanism survived only by a miracle because it sank, becoming inaccessible for recycling. What we find is not an exception, but the only surviving tip of a vast but submerged technological base. If, 2,000 years from now, only a single iPhone remains from our civilization, will future archaeologists be able to recreate our entire IT industry from it? Or will they also call it an out-of-place artifact? This debate is not just theoretical, it breaks human lives. What does a scientist feel when holding the impossible in their hands? The moment of the greatest discovery, the find of a lifetime, often becomes the beginning of a professional catastrophe. First comes euphoria and the certainty that you are bringing new knowledge to the world. But reality hits hard. The excitement of colleagues gives way to skepticism, then accusations of fabricating data. Everything is at stake: funding, position, reputation. It is a battle of one against a system that protects its stability. In his journal, such a scientist might write, "Today they called my work pseudoscience. I brought them a miracle, and they see in it only a threat to their dissertations. And the main inconvenient question that threatens the entire system, we will ask in our climax." So we are at a crossroads. On one side, we have proven artifacts, on the other, scientific dogma. What happens if we choose the chair with the artifact? Acknowledging UParts is not just a new chapter in a textbook. It is the realization that the entire structure of our understanding of the past may be wrong. This presents us with a choice between two revolutionary hypotheses. The first, a conservative one: geniuses on the level of Da Vinci sporadically appeared in history, thousands of years ahead of their time. The second, a radical one: these artifacts are the legacy of an entire, highly developed civilization that vanished without leaving other traces. Either our history is a story of isolated breakthroughs, or it is a story of great amnesia. In the next and final chapter of our investigation, we will explore how our world would change if we dared to accept the second, boldest version. Let's assume we accept this version. The first conclusion is obvious. Ancient civilizations were technologically far more advanced than we thought. But this is just a correction to the old map, not a change in the entire route. The real shift is that history is not a straight line of progress from the axe to the smartphone, but a sine wave of incredible heights and profound collapses. It took humanity 1,400 years to again reach the level of complexity of the Antikythera mechanism. That is longer than the entire era from the fall of Rome to the invention of the steam engine. We are not the first high-tech civilization. We have lost more than just knowledge. We have lost an entire chapter of human history. How could a 16th century admiral know what Antarctica looked like? Piri Reis himself cited maps from the time of Alexander the Great, possibly from the Library of Alexandria. This explanation seems logical, but the details of the map destroy this convenient version. It depicts the coastline of Antarctica without its ice cap. This pushes the age of the original source back at least 6,000 years, to an era when no known civilization existed. These artifacts are not just anomalies. They are fragments, echoes of a lost proto-civilization that preceded Sumer in Egypt. For the first time, the myth of Atlantis has physical evidence. But how could great knowledge disappear almost without a trace? Wars, cataclysms, the fire at the Library of Alexandria explain the loss of some knowledge, but not total amnesia. A deeper answer lies in the possibility that knowledge was not widespread, but elitist. Complex technologies were the domain of a narrow caste of priests or engineers. The demise of this single group would have permanently severed the technological branch. It's like a complex trick known only to one family of circus performers. If the entire troupe perishes, the unique skill disappears forever. How many people in the world today could recreate the technology for producing microchips from scratch? Very few. Our technological power is just as vulnerable. And this brings us to the main question for us today. What does all this change for us in the 21st century? It changes not only our past, but also our future. Two crucial lessons for our civilization follow from this. First, if knowledge is so fragile, we must make colossal efforts to preserve and duplicate it. Second, if ancient people with primitive tools could create computing machines, our own capabilities are limited not by technology, but only by our imagination. Out-of-place artifacts are a challenge to our pride, a reminder of the fragility of civilization, and a source of inspiration, proving that human genius is capable of the impossible. In the final chapter, we will bring all the threads together, and you will decide what place these artifacts will occupy in your worldview. Our investigation began with a single miracle, a shapeless lump of bronze from the seabed that turned out to be a highly complex analog computer. But behind it, we saw a whole museum of impossible things. The Baghdad Battery hinted at lost knowledge and energy. The Nimrud Lens questioned the history of optics. And the Piri Reis map blew up our understanding of ancient geography. These artifacts, found more than 2,000 kilometers apart, prove that technological breakthroughs in antiquity touched upon mechanics, energy, and cartography. These are not scattered anomalies. They are fragments of a coherent but lost picture. In 60 seconds, we will draw the main conclusion, and in 90, you will become a part of history. We didn't just believe these stories, we tested them. Using radiocarbon dating, stratigraphy, and cross-referencing evidence, we learned to separate facts from hoaxes. And the main conclusion of this stage is that the key artifacts, especially the Antikythera mechanism found by Elias Stadiatis, withstand the strictest scientific scrutiny. This moves them from the realm of legend to the category of evidence. But even in the face of evidence, scientific dogma resists. We saw a clash of two positions. An anomaly is an exception, versus an anomaly is the tip of the iceberg. And we realized this is not a dispute about facts. It is a deep battle of worldviews, for the stability of the familiar picture of the world versus its revolutionary revision. And this battle has led us to the main, shocking conclusion about the nature of history itself. Our conventional view of history as a straight line of progress, leading from simple to complex, is most likely wrong. History is not a monolithic wall, but a shattered mosaic. Most of its fragments are lost forever. From the ones we have, we try to assemble a coherent picture. And out-of-place artifacts are fragments from another, unknown part of this mosaic that do not fit our pattern. This means that the past is full not only of tragedies, but also of lost peaks and forgotten geniuses. Our search is just beginning. At the start, we asked the question, how could the Greeks create a computer? Now the answer is clear. They were the heirs to knowledge whose scale we are only beginning to comprehend. We have presented you with the evidence, the methods, and the hypotheses. Now, the choice is yours. Ultimately, there are two fundamental views on these artifacts. The first view, they are anomalies. Unique exceptions, brilliant accidents that only confirm the general rule of slow, linear progress. With this view, our history is safe. The second view, they are proof. Material evidence, fragments of lost knowledge and possibly entire civilizations. This means our history is incomplete, and its most exciting chapters have yet to be written. What is it for you? Make your choice. Write a single word in the comments that reflects your position, anomaly, or evidence. Let's see which version of history wins today.